Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Falcons Central Radio Show on the Pro Football Central Radio Network. I'm Aaron Freeman, founder of FalcFans.com. I'm joined by my co-host and partner, Scott Karasik, who writes for Bleacher Report. This week we are going to be back talking about the Atlanta Falcons. We will be breaking down the offensive line in our weekly positional breakdown. We will be answering your mailbag questions. This has not been the busiest of weeks. The Falcons wrapped their mini camp last week, and basically between now and training camp, there is nothing football related. So hopefully there will be no news, because usually if there is any football related news, it's not good news at this time of year, because it usually involves a player getting arrested or something like that. So we probably won't be talking too much about the Falcons in terms of news, but in light of that, I think Scott and I will start the show off talking a little bit about what we're going to do for the next couple of weeks, if we have any plans to, now that really football is on hiatus for a while. So, Scott, I'm curious if you got any plans for these next couple of weeks before training camp starts.
I'm going to focus on actually selling some cars. So, not really. Trying to make some money for that PlayStation 4.
Okay. That's a good plan. I need to do that. I need to get a job. So that's what I'm going to be focused on. So, money.
You need to get a new job?
All right. Yeah. My old job ended a couple of weeks ago. So, and they won't be hiring me back till like January. So I am officially unemployed right now.
That happens.
Yeah. So it's fun. It's exciting, I guess. But I'll probably be, writing more. I have free time to write more Falcon stuff. So I'll probably, be constructive with this time and have some content up, but we'll see.
Well, you can always be destructive.
Could do that. All right. Well, folks, I know you guys don't really care about my job situation, Scott. So let's start talking about this offensive line. We got plenty to talk about. So as usual, we will be discussing, who we think are going to be the starters, who we think are going to be the backups, who we think are going to make the team, and, what are some of the bigger questions going into training camp at this position group. Obviously, I think most probably would agree that the starters are going to be from left to right: Jake Matthews, Chris Chester, Joe Hawley, John Asamoah, and Ryan Schrader. Scott, do you have any disagreements on that?
No, that sounds about right. The only disagreement I have is if they sign Evan Mathis, and in that situation, then you pull Chester out and put Mathis in. But other than that, yeah, I'd agree.
All right, so you dropped Evan Mathis. What are the odds that you think the Falcons will wind up signing Evan Mathis?
I'd go with a nice solid 10%.
Okay. All right. Just because I always feel like I need to one-up you, Scott, I'll go 15%. So I don't think the odds are great, but it would be nice to do. It would be nice to have.
I mean, again, I have no idea what Evan Mathis is thinking. I know he's from Alabama, but he might want to go to a team that's probably going to the playoffs this year for sure. He might want to go to Denver and do that one last run thing with Peyton, which would be great for him. Not disagreeing, but I kind of hope that he comes here, and if he does come here, I think that Atlanta goes from being probably a 10-win team to being probably a 12-win team. I think he's worth that much.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting, because I think all the questions that a lot of people have about the Falcons' offensive line would be thrown out the window. I know a lot of people this offseason, particularly when they'll run up to the draft, we're talking about how the Falcons have needs at right tackle and they have needs at this position on the offensive line, and Jake Matthews isn't any good. And I think a lot of those issues are a little overblown. I think a lot of those people probably didn't watch Ryan Schrader last year, and so they thought he was not as good as that he actually was. I also think a lot of those people didn't really watch Jake Matthews last year. I think Jake Matthews, when he was healthy, was an above average offensive tackle. His problems really were he was hurt for about 6 weeks, and he played 5 or 6 bad games during those 6 weeks. And when he was healthy, really didn't play at a poor level. So it's one of those things. I think if Mathis was to sign, a lot of people would be like, oh, well, maybe the Falcons do have a good offensive line, and they would, give us a second look that I think we already deserve. But I'd be for it if we do sign Mathis. Obviously, why wouldn't I be against it? So I hope it happens, but I'm not counting on it.
Yeah, I wouldn't ever count on Atlanta going out and magically signing the best free agent on the market. Because the last time they did that was oh, that's right. They never have.
I was hoping you got an answer, man. Because I was like, Ray Buchanan in 1998?
No, I'd say that like the best free agent signing they made was probably Ray Buchanan. Maybe, maybe it was Ray Buchanan, but you can make an argument that the best free agent signing in Falcons history is Michael Turner.
Yeah.
Which is sad that it's Michael Turner. Not that I don't like Turner, but it's sad that he would be the best free agent signing in Falcons history.
Yeah. I know at the time when they signed Chris Doman that people thought that was going to be their best free agent signing, but that didn't work out for them.
Yeah, it wasn't signing Reggie White with the Packers or anything close to that.
Yeah. Reggie White's still the greatest free agent signing in NFL history.
Yeah.
And that was, 22 years ago? So, all right, let's get back to the offensive line. So we got the starters pretty much settled. So that pretty much means that the real questions going into training camp are involving who's going to be the backups. And I would probably say that the one player that I would say is probably the closest thing to a lock to making the team is probably going to be Mike Person. But outside of him, I would say, there are other guys that I think probably will make the team, but I wouldn't sit there and say that they're locks necessarily.
I don't think there's a single lock outside of Person either. Especially not Columbus. Columbus is garbage. He's awful. He should not be in the NFL right now. That's just the truth.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree.
It's hard for me to be nice about someone who's terrible. And then Lamar Holmes, if he's healthy, would be a solid swing tackle. But even then, you don't want to rely on him. Honestly, Jake Rogers might be the best backup tackle that the Falcons have on their roster right now. As crazily terrible as that sounds. And I'd love to see Peter Kahns move to tackle.
I don't know if that.
The real issue is strength more than anything else. He's not strong.
I don't think he has feet to play the tackle. His feet are pretty bad too, but it doesn't get exposed because he's a guard.
I mean, he's probably being cut either way. If we're being honest here, Kahns is probably gone. James Stone and Valerian Ume-Ezioke are probably going to stay on this Falcons roster as reserves. And then Mike Person as the backup guard, and then Jake Rogers as the backup tackle. I could see a situation where Holmes, Columbus, and your boy Harlan Gunn all get cut. because they like what they see in person because Person's played a little bit of tackle too. And I could see him being a good fit as a emergency tackle, game day, guard tackle guy while Rodgers is learning. And then have Stone or Ume Ezioke as the game day center / guard guy.
All right. This is a position group where I really do think there's a pretty good possibility that the Falcons shake up the roster at the end of training camp and go out and say, hey, none of these guys really do it for us. Let's go out and find some other guys that can, we can potentially sign and be backups from other teams that get cut. It's just one of those situations, especially tackle with Holmes being injured. He was really the only good or decent swing tackle candidate. Columbus is a horrible pass protector at right tackle, so he'll be even more horrible at left tackle. Jake Rodgers is not there yet. He might be able to get there like 2 or 3 years from now, but if he's the guy that is going to have to start games, if Jake Matthews or Ryan Schrader get hurt, then the Falcons line is in trouble. And other than Person, I do like Harlan Gunn. I think we have a scheme that now fits his skills. Now that they are going to keep him at guard, in the man blocking scheme, he was probably a better center than a guard, but now because we're zone blocking, he can play guard. But, that doesn't guarantee he's going to make the roster or anything like that. James Stone, I think, is a good fit for this new scheme. I don't know a ton about Valerian Ume Ezioke, but, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, Scott, and pretend that you know what you're talking about. But yeah, it's one of those situations where you just look at this roster and at least the backups, and not really anybody on this group you really feel comfortable with if they're forced to start, 10 games this year or whatever, if the circumstances prove them. Maybe Stone, maybe, but that's about it. So I'm curious if the Falcons, continue to look at options towards the end of training camp off the waiver wire.
I wouldn't be shocked if they did. I had Ezioke on my watch list, and I liked what I saw. I didn't think he was draftable when I saw him, but I think he had potential. He's a good athlete for the position. He needs to get better at doing line calls. Now, if they like him better as a guard, which is I've heard that from a couple guys close to the team, that they like him a lot better as a guard than as a tackle or than as a center. That makes a lot more sense because he's quick on his feet, but he's not a center. He doesn't have it up here. At least not yet. I'd love to see it. As a guard, he probably would have been a draftable player. I just think he's better than what the Falcons have in Peter Collins or Harlan Gunn. Definitely better than Jared Smith or Adam Raplagel. And Eric Lefeld might be a shocker kind of guy as a swing tackle as well. He played both left and right tackle at Cincinnati. I thought he did a great job. I think they took Jake Rodgers more as that developmental guy. Hope he makes the team because they had a feeling they were going to be able to sign Lefeld.
I do recall Lefeld being highly touted like his sophomore year and not really sort of improving his stock over the last couple of years. He had some struggles a little bit, but he's got, some ability. So it wouldn't shock me if he doesn't end up, making the team. Yeah, it's I think this is one of the reasons why you want the Falcons to sign Evan Mathis, because it's like you look at their depth and it's just like it's not really doing it for you. And we've seen over the last couple of years how important offensive line depth has been. And losing Holmes, if they end up losing Holmes for most of this summer, if not the start of the regular season, that's a huge blow. Even though I know there aren't that many people out there that are believers in Lamar Holmes, but compared to some of these other guys, I trust Lamar Holmes a lot more than I trust Tyler Columbus or Jake Rogers yet. And so it's like if you sign Evan Mathis, then Chris Chester becomes your backup at all three interior spots. And, things are looking a little bit more promising in that situation than they would be otherwise.
I think if you sign Mathis and Chester's your game day center guard, your swing tackle ends up being either Mike Person. Actually, in that case, your swing tackle probably is Mike Person. So that you're okay with. And then, Lamar Holmes, Columbus, Rogers, they all fight for a roster spot. And then basically Harlan Gunn, Peter Cons, James Stone, and Valerian all fight for that final spot. I think you're going to have a pretty solid line. It's just right now the depth isn't there, and signing Evan Mathis would totally give you depth.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see what the Falcons do, because this is a situation where they're hoping, it seems like, a competition over the course of the summer where you're going to basically have, 12 guys competing for maybe 4 spots, and you hope that in that competition, 4 good players emerge. And that's possible. That's what competition is there for. Ryan Schrader emerged that way. Harlan Gunn has emerged that way. Joe Hawley has emerged that way. James Stone. So it's one of those things where it could end up working out for the Falcons, and we may be eating our words in a month or two. But right now, it's just, I'm not losing any sleep over it, but it is a cause for concern if Mike Person is one twisted ankle away from starting 10 games for the Falcons this year. Matt Ryan's probably not going to be in the best of shape by the end of the year.
I just don't want an injury on the offensive line.
Yeah, it'd be nice to get 5 guys starting 16 games. That's usually a sign of success.
Yeah, basically.
All right, Scott. You got any more thoughts on the offensive line, or you want to jump into this mailbag?
Let's go ahead and jump into the mailbag.
All right, we have the makings of a pretty quick show. That's what happens in June. All right. Well, Kwame Haven, we already answered your question. What is the projection for the starting 5 of the offensive line hitting camp again? Matthews, Chester, Hawley, Asamoah, and Schrader. If Mathis is in the mix, then you swap out Chester and put Mathis in there. Devontae Hughes asks, who on the O-level will surprise us this season?
I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised by Ryan Schrader and just how good he gets. I think he could be Pro Bowl caliber by the time, people are going to be looking at him as, a legitimate Pro Bowl offensive lineman by the end of the season. And it's not going to be shocking because we're going to go, man, this guy looks like a skinny Claybo, the way I've been saying he has for the past few years.
I'm going to say, I think that's a good choice, Scott. I'm going to say Jake Matthews because I think there's still a sizable contingency of people that don't really buy into Jake Matthews. I think those people will be at least surprised at how good he is in the zone blocking scheme. My option 2, I would say Joe Hawley. I still think, there's a lot of Falcon fans that still think James Stone is the best center on the team. I think those Falcon fans will be surprised at how good Joe Hawley is.
Are you still talking about your boy Ryan?
No, not just Ryan. It's like 3 of them. I think they started a fan club, a James Stone fan club. So
Bleacher Report ranked Matt Miller ranked him as the 34th out of 35 starting centers last year. I thought that was being generous based on how I saw him play. I'm not knocking a guy because he was a rookie, but he was admirable for what a rookie could do. But he's not close to the best center on this roster. He was just better than Peter Cons. But Peter Kahns is so inept that he looks like me out there playing center.
Yeah. I thought James Stone showed some things. I like his athleticism. I think he'll, that's something that the zone blocking scheme does well and accentuates. But he's not violent with his hands, and that's one of those things where I'll give him a pass as a rookie, but that's one of those things where it has to improve this summer. That's got to be something. He's got to be more violent with his hands. Got to be more physical. If he's not, then he's not going to be much in the NFL. Because if you play on the interior of an offensive line, you have to be the meanest dude on that group. That's why Harvey Dahl had the success he had. That's why John Asamoah is as good. That's why Joe Hawley has been as successful as he's been. Todd McClure. You have to be the meanest dude on the block. And if you're not, and that's one of the big reasons why Peter Kahns has struggled, along with like 12 other things. And I think that's one of the reasons why James Stone wasn't quite as consistent in the second half of last season, because, dudes pushed him around a lot. So I hope he gets better. I see some promise in him, but yeah, he's definitely not the best center on the team. It's not even close. All right, Scott, Sporting ATL asks expectations for Jake in the zone blocking scheme versus what we saw last year.
I mean, I think he's going to be a lot better just based on health. But in the zone scheme, he's a way better run blocker. That's what he was in college. So going from a zone scheme to a man scheme where he's got to destroy someone off the line, that's not his strength. It never has been his strength. He's a get in the way run blocker, and he's a very talented pass blocker.
Yeah. I think Jake is as close to the prototype for what you look for in a zone blocking offensive line. I'd probably say Ryan Clady might be a notch above him, and then Jake is right there. But it's one of those things where you want a guy who's athletic, who can move. You don't need a guy that can mash dudes off the ball. That's never been Jake's game, as Scott alluded to. He wasn't good at that when Texas A&M asked him to do that. But he was very good at getting positioning and walling off guys and sealing alleys and blocking on the move and those sorts of things. And I think, he's going to be very good in this zone blocking scheme. And I agree with Scott. It's really going to be tied to his health. If he's healthy, he'll be great. If he's not healthy, then he might be average. Well, Jake Matthews, he's going to blossom in the scheme. And, I think it's magnificent that the old regime was so bad at finding the fits for their offensive line that now they've acquired basically half the starting offensive line are guys that are tailor-made for a zone blocking scheme when they didn't run a zone blocking scheme. Asamoah, Schrader, and Jake Matthews. So that's one thing that, Thomas Dimitrov's and Mike Smith's ineptitude has benefited the Falcons, because they had no clue what identity they were offensively. So they just kind of mish and mashed, zone blocking guys and man blocking guys, and, zone blocking is going to eventually win out.
I think you could also say Joe Hawley is also an ideal center for that scheme.
I would say James Stone, Harlan Gunn are also good zone blocking fits as opposed to man blocking fits. So
yeah, I mean, and remember for like the last 2 years, I've been saying Atlanta needs to run a zone blocking scheme.
I do remember that, Scott.
Remember even in 2012 where I was like, if Atlanta ran a zone blocking scheme for their running game, they would actually look pretty good, and then there wouldn't be an issue on a running game.
Yeah. So that's lovely. All right. Big Boy Brewski asks, love Roddy, but what are the odds of him being cut since he's always battling an injury?
The same odds as me getting with Scarlett Johansson. And she's married and has a kid and, is like ridiculously hot. And I'm like a short, fat Jewish kid from Atlanta. She like lives in LA and like France and shit. So I'm going to go with 0.
I would say the only possible way Roddy gets cut is if we find out he's involved in some cocaine trafficking ring out of Colombia or something like that, where he has been secretly committing this crime so heinous that the Falcons have no choice to cut him. So basically, the odds of Roddy getting cut are the same odds that he is secretly been Pablo Escobar of Atlanta for the last 8 years. So, I don't know about you, Scott, but I think that's pretty much zero.
I think my Scarlett Johansson comparison still holds a lot of water with what you just said.
Yeah. I mean, they're not going to cut Roddy. Roddy has declined, but he's not going to get cut. He's just not going to get cut.
No.
Not this year.
Freaking Roddy White. When people think of the Falcons, they don't think of, Matt Ryan or Julio Jones. Everyone still thinks of Roddy White. He's the face of the franchise to 99% of football fans in general. They think of Roddy White.
Yeah. Look, there may be a day about 7 months from now that Roddy might get cut. And, that may be dependent on guys like Justin Hardy and Leonard Hankerson having really good seasons this year. But until one of those two guys, turns into a 60 to 80 catch guy, Roddy's going to be on the Falcons. So that's the bottom line.
And even then, with those guys on either a minimum contract or a rookie contract, you're still not going to cut Roddy for one of them. Not saying that they're not good players, but even if Justin Hardy becomes the second coming of Steve Smith, he's still on a 4th-round draft picks contract for the next 3 years after that. Roddy's contract ends 2 years after this year. So even if Roddy played his contract out and, Hardy was playing like the next Steve Smith and you had, the next Steve Smith and Julio Jones playing across from each other and you had two guys who were just destroyers, it still wouldn't make sense to cut Roddy White based on the cap space that they've got. They've got ridiculous amounts of cap. It doesn't make sense to cut Roddy. He'd still contribute as a slot guy, as like a 40 catch, 500-yard, 6-7 touchdown kind of guy. Until the end of days, he's always going to be a red zone threat that's worth having, for those rub routes down low, because he does a great job on those. I don't see any way Roddy White ever gets cut from the Falcons.
Okay. I disagree a little with you, Scott. My expectation is Roddy won't get cut next year, but the Falcons will probably draft his replacement next year. And assuming that guy doesn't stink in 2016, I think Roddy is probably a goner by the time we reach 2017. I don't think Roddy will be playing in the new stadium.
I don't think they'll cut him, though. I think they'll say, hey, Roddy, we've got your replacement. Do you want to retire? Because we're going to cut you if you don't, but do you want to retire and we'll save face for everybody?
Okay, that's possible, certainly.
He's the longest tenured Falcon on the roster. They're not going to just up and cut him tomorrow.
That is true. All right. John Barrow asks, how the heck did Ricardo Allen go from a cut 5th-round pick last year to the talk of camp and a potential starter in 2015?
Remember when I said Mike Smith is inept and has no idea how to run a defensive concept or put guys in the right spots for their success, how to put guys where they win? I'm just going to put this out there. Mike Smith had no idea what the hell he was doing, didn't know where to put guys for their best success, and didn't know how to develop players. Dan Quinn, on the other hand, knows exactly how to do everything I just listed. He knows where to put guys. He knows exactly how to put them in the right spot for their best success. And then even then, he goes, you know what? Let's test them out. Let's put a competition here. I think Ricardo Allen is in his best possible spot, and I'm very, very, very happy that the Falcons have finally actually decided to be a team that makes sense. Players are playing in logical spots. Where does Paul Soliai play? He plays in the 1 technique. He's not being used as a 3 technique like Mike Nolan did sometimes. Oh, where's Tyson Jackson going to play? He's competing in a 5/6 technique on the edge at, strong side defensive end. He's not competing inside because that's not where he wins. Oh, where's Babineau playing? Oh, he's at 3 technique where he wins. When you have coaches who understand where players win and then puts those players where they win, you're going to have a better team. And you're going to have someone like me going, man, this is great to see. Thank God.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you, Scott. I think the reason why Ricardo Allen got cut last year is because the Falcons added 4, 5, 9 corners. I don't think it has anything to do with coaches not playing them. I think it has everything to do with poor team building, which I think is the front office is just as culpable, if not more culpable. The Falcons went out, already had Robert McClain, went out and got 3 5'9" corners. Week after week on this show last year, I said the Falcons need more size at cornerback. They need more size at cornerback. What do? They go out and got the shortest group of corners that they could possibly find. The reality is Ricardo Allen doesn't fit Dan Quinn's scheme as a cornerback, so he has to play free safety. Now, luckily for him, he has the tools to play free safety. I thought last year that he was a better free safety candidate than a cornerback candidate if he was only a little bit taller and a little bit bigger, because he's not that good of a cornerback. And the Falcons used a 5th-round pick on him. I don't think it has anything to do with coaching. I think it has to do with player evaluation. And that's just as much coaching, if not, that's just as much front office as it is coaching. As for Ricardo Allen being the talk of camp, it's mini camp. It doesn't mean anything. We'll see what happens when the pads come on. I hope Ricardo Allen plays great this summer. I hope I'm eating crow come September, but, it's mini camp. Bernard Reedy was the star of minicamp last year. What did he do last year? Nothing.
That's very true. I mean,
all right.
I disagree with you just because I think that had there been competent coaches, they would have said, you know what? Let's put Ricardo Allen out there instead of, I don't know, Javier Arenas, who wasn't very good either.
Okay. I mean, that's fine, but it's still at the end of the day, Ricardo Allen wasn't that good of a cornerback. And the reason why he didn't play safety last year is because the Falcons reached on Desmond Southwood in the 3rd round. Again, front office, not coach. Front office decided to take Desmond Southwood about 60 picks earlier than where he should have been picked.
Mike Smith had a huge hand in picks. I wasn't a big fan of the Southwood pick either. I'm just saying Mike Smith had a huge hand in who they picked, and they really liked him from the Senior Bowl.
Oh, I'm sure Mike Smith had a huge hand in selecting Desmond Southwood, but it's still up to the general manager, who had 53-man roster control last year, to decide, am I going to take this 6th-round talent at safety in the 3rd round? And if Mike Smith is telling him, let's take this 6th-round talent in the 3rd round, then the general manager is not good at his job. The same reason that the general manager is like Mike Nolan and Scott Pioli, like, let's give this, average 3-4 defensive end $25 million. Let's give this over-the-hill nose tackle $33 million. A good GM is going to be like, no, Scott Pioli, no, Mike Nolan. I'm not going to sign guys that are just mediocre players for $60 million. But we don't have a good GM, so, now we have a coach that can do the GM's job for him. So finally the Falcons are in the right hands.
We got a guy with 53-man roster control and a vision. That was the biggest issue. There was no vision. Hey, let's get all this 3-4 personnel and then run a 4-2-5. Hey, let's get all the zone blocking personnel and then run power man, Mike Tice style blocking.
Yeah. But hey, if you want to run a power man scheme, how about the front office go out and get power man players? But
I've got a theory that Dimitroff knew he wanted to have a coach with this 4-3 and with the power and with the zone blocking scheme, so he was sabotaging Mike Smith. But that's just my thoughts.
All right, well, we got a 7-figure GM that sabotages his coaches. Awesome.
Makes more sense than what actually was happening.
Oh, it makes perfect sense if you just believe that he's incompetent. So. All right, moving on. JD Beast. He links us to a Bleacher Report article about buying and selling teams offseason. He strongly disagreed with the take on the Atlanta Falcons, which was to sell their offseason because they didn't add any playmakers or whatever. So what are our thoughts on this article, Scott?
It's freaking June. Like, not everybody's going to be a believer in the Falcons. And honestly, I don't want everybody to be a believer in the Falcons. I mean, yeah, sell the offseason because there wasn't a big splash. If anything, that's why I would buy the offseason. How many times have we seen the big splash go out there and you make 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, big splashes? You get a dream team. And then what happens? What happened in Philly when they had their dream team?
Yeah, you're right. I agree with you.
I think this is the right way to do it. You go out there, you get guys that are hungry and humble and want to bust their ass for a team. So instead of going out and getting Derek Morgan, who has spent all offseason, going and getting his degree, yeah, that's great, but that has nothing to do with football. That's not his craft. They go out and get Adrian Claiborne, who spent all offseason with Chuck Smith. That's it. That's all he's been doing all offseason. Hey, how do I improve my pass rush? And he's been in Atlanta all offseason.
Yeah, I mean, this is what the offseason is about. You want the headline making moves. But, the example I always use is the offseason where the Ravens, before the Ravens won the Super Bowl, they signed Corey Graham, who was like a fourth string cornerback, and some special team safety, and they waited till like the end of May to sign Jacoby Jones off of waivers or something like that. Nothing sexy, but yet the Ravens went on and won the Super Bowl because the big sexy moves don't work out. Like the numbers clearly show that basically signing a guy to a long-term contract, long-term contract, there's like a 70% chance that he's only going to last 2 years on your team. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't make any sense to go out and get, would getting an Ndamukong Suh be awesome? Would it be sexy? Sure. But would it really improve the team significantly?
No.
Probably. Maybe. Sure. I don't know, but I don't know. But it's one of those things where it's like you look at these off-season articles and they're looking for the big splashes. And it's the teams that make the little moves that don't make the big mistakes. One of the reasons why the Ravens have always been a relevant team over the last 20 years is because they don't miss in free agency, because they never go out and spend gobs and gobs of money on these big, sexy names. They just get the quietly solid players. They get the Justin Forsetts. They get the Jacoby Joneses. They get, all of these solid moves. Like their worst free agent signing ever in the last 15 years was Elvis Grbac. They haven't had a bad free agent signing, or like a terrible one at least, in 15 years. And yet they consistently are winning playoff games. They're consistently competing at the highest levels. That's the way the Falcons are operating. It's not sexy, but it's what wins in the NFL.
I mean, their most recent free agent signing that was any sort of big was Elvis Dumervil, which anybody could have told you that was going to pan out. And Eugene Monroe, which, again, anybody could have told you those two were going to pan out. Then they also got Darryl Smith, again, guys who were just good, solid football players, and they didn't overpay for any of them.
Yeah, they signed Darryl Smith to like a 1-year minimum deal in June.
If you look at Dumervil's deal, I was sitting there screaming, basically, Atlanta needs to go after Dumervil. They're stupid if they don't even try. They didn't even try.
Got OC instead.
Huh?
We got OC instead.
They should have kept Abraham at a smaller contract, signed OC, and gone out and gotten Dumervil. Because that would have made sense. Because then, if one of them gets hurt, no big deal. One of them gets hurt, you still got two of them. If one of them underperforms, okay, whatever, no big deal. You still have at least two of them, You got guys you're developing.
Yes. You're basically saying they should have invested in a pass rush.
Yeah, exactly. They should have invested in the pass rush instead of in Ray Edwards.
And run defenders. Yeah. Awesome free agent strategy, guys. All right, Falcons. All right. Delible Think asks, defensive coordinator Richard Smith has been quiet all offseason. Any updated thought on if he or Dan Quinn called defensive plays and if it matters?
This is a puppet. This is Richard Smith. This is Dan Quinn's hand. Richard Smith is Dan Quinn's puppet. Doesn't matter who's calling the defense, it's Dan Quinn's defense. And it's not like he's going to have millions of plays to call from. There's like 8 plays in the entire defense. Cover 3. Cover 1 man. Oh, wait, we've got a nickel set. Cover 3. Cover 1 man. Oh, hey, we're going to run a blitz now. But still, cover 3. Like, that's it.
Yeah. I think Dan Quinn's going to call the plays. I think it's been set up to be that way. If Smith is the defensive play caller, it's only nominal. It's going to be like Dan Quinn whispering in his ear to tell him the play to call. So, yeah. And it doesn't really matter that much.
No. I mean, it's honestly irrelevant because of how simple the defense is going to be. It's like playing a Madden defense against NFL guys. And your job is to just beat the guy in front of you based on your athleticism. Not even talent, just raw athleticism. Take your athleticism, use it, and beat the guy in front of you. That's why I think Hageman is going to have a good season. That's why I think Soliai is going to have a really good season because he's ridiculously athletic for how fat he is.
Fair point, yeah.
So,
and Soliai looked pretty good last preseason. I don't know what happened in the regular season, but he was kicking butt last preseason. Looked like he was poised to have a good season, and then
played a completely different role in the regular season than he did in the preseason. It made no sense. He went from playing a 1 technique to a 0 technique all season. It was the most confusing shit I've ever seen.
All right, last question comes from Quinn Van Pelt. He asks, are the Falcons going to be composed of guys being dudes? He's, of course, referencing Steve Adazio's vines from a couple of years ago at Boston College.
I don't even know what the fuck that means.
Well, Scott, you're in luck. I went down the Steve Adazio vine rabbit hole earlier today when Quinn first sent in this question, and they are glorious. I'm shocked that I missed them from 2 years ago, but it's just basically him standing around in Boston College campus talking about guys being dudes. He called Matt Ryan a dude, Mark Herzog a dude, Luke Kuechly a dude, B.J. Raji a dude. So I think the Falcons are going to be guys being dudes. So yes, to answer your question.
I still have no idea what this question even means. So I'm going to check out best, and I'm going to punt.
All right. It's a good 5 minutes of your life. Just check out those slides. All right, folks, that is our show this week. All right, you can hit up Scott on Twitter at Scott Karasik. Check out his stuff on Bleacher Report. I'm on FalcFans.com as well as on Twitter at FalcFans. Hit up the show at Falcons PFC. If you want to have your question answered on next week's show, use the hashtag Falcons mailbag and we'll get that. And next week we'll be talking D-ends and D-tackles.
I think we're going to do interior defensive linemen. Then we'll do edge players. Then we'll do linebackers in that kind of order. And I'll show you how I break it down.
All right, we'll pad it. We'll pad this thing out. So yeah, we should do interior.
Interior defensive lineman.
All right. So interior defensive line next week. So I get to talk about Jonathan Babineau. All right, it's gonna be a fun show.